we had an epoch-making conversation with the Dean of Students, and he told me categorically that George Bush, you have won the elections, but it is not in the best interest of the university that you become the chairman. The will of the people is sacred in any democratic establishment. So when the vast majority of students under my leadership realized that there was electoral fraud, they violently rejected the outcome of that elections. So my relationship with the students was excellent, And that's why I was entrusted with the mandate to be in charge of, or to preside over all the student popular functions. According to the official reasons that they were giving for suspending me from the university, there were very flimsy grounds. They were saying that I'm being suspended in the interest of peace in the university. My name is George Bush. I served Moi University Student Organization as the Prime Director of the 27th Student Governing Council. Hitherto, this position was unprecedented. It was established pursuant to a ceasefire agreement that was negotiated by the Dean of Students and the candidates. And that ceasefire agreement was prompted by the absolute rejection of electoral fraud by the broad masses of comrades under my absolute leadership.
So, first of all, before we go to how you got into power, we want to know, how did you get into campus politics?
Our path into campus politics was very clear. We sought autonomy. Majority of the students, when we got into Moi University, students' organization politics, wanted the union to be autonomous. And that was the genesis of our arrival into politics. There was a clamor for constitutional change, and I led the broad masses of students who were championing for union autonomy. So we petitioned the administration and the Dean of Students so that we could embark on a plebiscite, sort of, on a change of law. Because the fundamental law that governed student politics then was drafted years back when student politics was still conjoined with university administration. So we petitioned the university so that we could review the student constitution. So we were given an opportunity, and I chaired the Constitution Review Commission alongside other commissioners. We had Michael Misigo, we had Sikuri, we had Salmon Omondi, and others who were commissioners in the Constitution Review Commission. So that was the genesis of our participation in politics. And our legitimate historical objective was to liberalize the union, or liberate it from the shackles of university administration.
So, what activities led to the formation of the Grand Coalition of the Students' Council?
As I had stated before, elections were held. You know, election is one of the crucial pillars of democracy. Elections were held. We expected that the will of the majority of students would be respected. The will of the people is sacred in any democratic establishment. So when the vast majority of students under my leadership realized that there was electoral fraud. They violently rejected the outcome of that elections. And we petitioned that the election results be audited, and it was audited. And when it was audited, it was clear that the students' will was being shortchanged. And that is when we got into negotiations to come up with a ceasefire agreement that established the position of the Prime Director. Now, there was a protocol to that ceasefire agreement, and the protocol to that ceasefire agreement established or defined the mandate of the office of the Prime Director that I occupied for a period of 1 year. Now, probably the mandate was, my office had 5 functions. Number 1, it was supposed to be the depository of all the union official instruments, and my office was supposed to be the custodian of Moi University Students Organization Constitution, and I was also supposed to be presiding over all official functions of the student union, and I was also to be the spokesperson of the union. And to enrich the office further, the Constitution Review Commission was attached to my office. Now, it was an office, and there was a commission that was also attached to that office. And further, the Dean of Students also attached 2 full-fledged directors to be part of that office. The director in charge of Constitution Review, and also the director who was the secretary, the organizing secretary of the union, was also attached to my office. So in essence, the office became more powerful than the student governing union organization. So that was where we were.
At the time, what was the relationship between you and the students, and again the relationship between you fellow student leaders and that with the administration?
Previous to the elections.
After elections?
After elections, it was very clear that when the results were audited, it was very clear that George Bush had emerged victorious in the just concluded elections. So when it came to my relationship with the students, and probably that is what informed the allocation of those functions to my office, because those functions directly dealt with the students. So my relationship with the students was excellent, and that's why I was entrusted with the mandate to be in charge of, or to preside over, all the student popular functions from the inception of the governing council. Now, my relationship with the Dean of Students, previously, before the elections, we had a very rough relationship, because the elections came on the heels of an agitation for, or a clamor for, change of constitution. So definitely we had a very, we were not in the very best of relationship prior to the elections, but I can confirm that after the conclusion of the vote, when the university was in a crisis, when the masses had rejected the results, I can confirm that the Dean of Students displayed a character that I wish that future administrators could emulate. It was extremely gracious, it was modest, and above all, he understood the difference or the distinction between the greater good and political expediency. And that is why when the results were audited and we demanded that there be negotiations to establish a joint government, he cooperated in as much as there was pressure from the administration. He cooperated and said that the winner of the elections must have his rightful place in the government. And just to mention that the Dean of Students told me after the audit, we had an epoch-making conversation with the Dean of Students, and he told me categorically that George Bush, you have won the elections, but it is not in the best interest of the university that you become the chairman. So I offer you 2 positions. I want you to be the chairman of the Constitution Review Commission, which you were previously chairing before elections, and I will finance that commission fully. And after the completion of the term of this Student Governing Council, I would also support you to be the chairman of the Student Electoral Commission. But I said no. I said no because I urged the Dean of Students to consider the greater good, and that this election was a crucial step in the historical process of liberating the union from the administration.
So for the benefit of those people who do not know the Dean of Students that we are speaking about, it would be better if you name him.
The Dean of Students of Moi University, when we came, at the time that we came into university, and so was even before we came, was even at the first, second, third, all those student governing councils from the 1st to the 27th that we are talking about was Dean Mureithi, David Mwenje Mureithi.
Where did you reach with the constitutional review? Because by the time we left, we didn't have any constitution. What were you people doing?
We did amazing work, and I think we need to commend the commission that was reviewing the constitution, because we reviewed the constitution. Our task was very clear, that we reviewed the constitution, and then we advised the Dean of Students on what the next course of action was supposed to be. Now, we reviewed the constitution, we benchmarked, we took the views from other comrades, we collected views from students who are anticipating joining the university, because we wanted something that would exist for posterity, because what was their expectation. Now, after we completed the process of constitution review, we handed over the constitution to the Dean of Students and advised that as soon as possible, a referendum be held so that the students can have their say as far as that adoption or rejection of the constitution was concerned. And there was a general clamor because the students wanted the new constitution. You see, the election, first and foremost, was contested on student union autonomy. Now, when the process of reviewing the constitution was complete, the student wanted the union to be autonomous. And now, after delivering on that mandate, immediately I was suspended from the university. So I could not follow up with the issue of referendum because the constitution had already been delivered. We were supposed to go for a referendum, but because the administration feared that if the union is liberated from the administration, probably the streams of revenue that were coming from student subscription would be diverted to activities that focused on comrade affairs. And that is what probably that they feared, and that they would be facing the prospect of a more aggressive, agitative union after the referendum.
What was the cause of the suspension?
I have the suspension letter. They, according to the official reasons that they were giving for suspending me from the university, there were very flimsy grounds. They were saying that I'm being suspended in the interest of peace in the university. I was being suspended because there were a lot of, there was commotion. I was being suspended because there was a new student governing council that had just been elected. They gave very flimsy ground that could not amount in the traditional expectation of why a student leader should be suspended. But the truth behind my suspension was that I wanted to hold a referendum, and I was determined to hold one before I leave the university.
What are your last remarks?
My last remarks, first of all, regarding Moi University, I want to say that we raised a generation in Moi University that was actuated by higher ideals. We decided to do justice. We were steadfast in the face of oppression by the administration. Our people consistently stood against impunity, and we consistently represented the interest of the broad masses of comrades that entrusted me with the task of being the head of the 27th Student Governing Council. Number two, the 26th Student Governing Council, I want to single out two people, and one of them is Dikembe December. Dikembe December was a product of fate. Dikembe was not a candidate that the comrades had entrusted their interest or their future or the future of the union to. Dikembe, as faced to David, triumphed at the last crossfire in Kamkunji. But later on, Dikembe became the biggest or the greatest disgrace to the spirit of comradeship, to the extent that he transferred his studies from main campus and integrated at Nairobi campus of Moi University. Now, as a lesson to future leaders of the union, I don't want anybody to emulate the kind of politics that Dikembe December played when he was in campus, because he ended up being an enemy of all the comrades. He did not articulate any of the grievances. He did not articulate the plight of the comrades. He did not represent the interests of the people. Number two is Florence Togana, Mwalimu Florence Togana. He was the president of the 26th Student Governing Council. May his soul rest in peace. Now, that is one of the few people that would have helped us transform this country. He was a very brilliant man. He was incredible. He had a proper mastery of the issues that affected the common people. In fact, if there's anyone who rose from nowhere to become the president based purely on merit and political acumen, it was Florence Togana. And I think we wish him, grace as he rests with the Lord. And now concerning the Dean of Students, I also wish to make a few remarks that David Mwenje Murithi, the Dean of Students, Moi University actually, the union, we need to distinguish the two. We have the university, then we have the union, then we have the governing council. Now, the dean is for Moi University, but all student affairs are handled by the Dean of Students. Until lately, when we introduced the position of Deputy Vice Chancellor Student Affairs. Now, that's why I keep on referring to the Dean of Students. Now, the Dean of Students is a very modest man. He's a very gracious man. He's a man that we also need to really study how it was possible to preside over student affairs for over 30 years in a time when universities like Nairobi University were facing a crisis in management of student affairs. Universities like Maseno University were facing crisis in management of student affairs. Kenyatta University, all those big universities were facing crisis in management of student affairs. But the Dean of Students, up to the last moment when he put his fingers on the ceasefire agreement that established the 27th Student Governing Council, demonstrated a proper understanding of the greater good at the expense of political expediency.